Well, good evening, everybody. Welcome to our event this evening, and we're thrilled to have you all here, and especially to welcome all the parents of our incoming students. We know that you play a tremendously important part in our students' success, and so we want to give you all the best information that we can to help you play that part most effectively. So my name is Bruce Sparling. I'm the Associate Dean Academic in the College of Engineering. And before I was, so I'm a professor in the Department of Civil Engineering, but before I was a professor, I was practiced as a structural engineer. And so I was designing um, buildings and supports for equipment in the heavy industrial sector, and the mining sector. So that's kind of my area of expertise. So what I've been asked to do tonight is start off the evening and talk a little bit about what I see in my role as uh, Associate Dean, what I see some of the keys to success, especially for incoming students transitioning into first year. So before I do that, though, I just want to bring up a couple of points. First of all, I want you to know that if students have been accepted, we truly believe that every student that's accepted has the ability and background to succeed. And the second thing I want you to know is that we really do want every student who comes through our doors to succeed. In fact, we've designed our new first year program using the latest in research that tells us um, what the most effective ways to help students and support them in that success. So those are the things that I really want to emphasize. But that being said, we realize that the transition from high school to university, and especially to a challenging professional program like engineering, can be a challenge for students. So I'd like to share with you a little bit about what I see as some of the keys to success. And one of them is, and most of these have to do with the ability to adjust to the changing learning environment and the changing expectations. So first of all, students need to be self-directed learners, developing ownership of their own academic success. So our instructors will do their best to make sure that the expectations are clear. They'll do their best to remind students about what is needed and what they have to do to be successful. But ultimately, it's up to the student to make sure that they're at lectures, that they know what's due that week, to make sure their assignments are done, that they're keeping up, that they're studying for exams. And this is a major change from high school, that teachers aren't there to give them these continual reminders. So that's the one thing, to be self-directed learners. Probably the biggest stumbling block that I see for students is the development of reliable and effective time management skills. So in addition to the lectures and the labs that our students have to take, they can expect to spend roughly about 2 hours of work outside of their class time for every hour they spend in the lectures. And so it's going to be a busy week. And so in order to make sure that you get everything in that you need to get in a week, it's important to have a way of managing your time, of scheduling out how you're going to accomplish everything you need, and then having the self-discipline to stick to that schedule and make sure things get done. So whether this is using an electric calendar, something on your phone or other device, or whether it's a good old paper day planner, you need something to lay out your week and decide what you need to do, and then the discipline to stick to that. So that is the single biggest challenge that I see in incoming first years. And so that's something that you can help your child to develop those skills, or think about how they're going to do that. The other thing that I think is extremely important in engineering is to be able to develop the necessary level of grit and resilience. So engineering, there's no question about it. It's a challenging program. Um, as a student, they will write, over 100 exams in their academic career. They'll have several hundred assignments, and I can guarantee you that not every one of those will go as well as they would have hoped. So there isn't a faculty member on our staff who hasn't failed an exam, perhaps failed a course, and so it's important that students realize this and develop the attitude. Well, that didn't go well. How can I approach this in a better way, and what can I learn from this? And we know from engineering design that we learn as much from our failures as we do from our successes. And as parents, that this is probably one of the main um, ways that you can support your children is to keep them positive, keep them focused on the long-term goal, which isn't the mark in this exam or even in this class. It's the finishing the degree successfully and having a successful career. So this idea of grit and resilience is very, very important, and psychologists call this the growth mindset, knowing that we can, if we stick to it and we work at it, we can improve. So these are all challenges, and it is something that is a little daunting for incoming students. But the good news is that students aren't in this by themselves. That the university and the college provides a lot of resources to help students succeed, and we put a lot of effort in making sure that these supports are available. So as parents, what I would encourage is that you encourage your students to make use of these supports, to reach out to the professors, to academic advisors, to the student learning services on campus, to the student wellness center, whatever supports that they need at that time. This is one of the things that students are very reluctant to do, maybe timid about doing. But as a instructor of a first year class, I can tell you that I really enjoyed when students were engaged and asking good questions and participating and taking ownership of their learning. So encourage them to reach out and to ask for help when they need it. And asking help is a proven path to success. So so studies have shown that students with good help-seeking strategies tend to do better academically. So engineering is something that nobody gets through on their own. You have to use the help of others, and there is that help available. So in addition to professors and the academic advisors are also a very good resource. So I encourage students to make regular contact with an academic advisor, make sure that they're making the right choices about course selections and things like that, and just touching base, at least once a year. Make sure you talk to an academic advisor. They can point you towards all the resources that are available on campus. They're a tremendous resource, so please do contact them. Um, Another thing that I would really encourage students to do is take opportunities to develop peer support groups. And so as part of our new program, we'll have daily tutorial sessions at the end of the day where students can get together and work with teaching assistants, but also probably more importantly with each other to learn from each other, to teach each other. And we know from research that this is one of the most effective ways for students to learn. So please do encourage your students to take part in these learning activities because they are very important. And engineering is really a team sport that nobody gets through on their own. And the developing of these peer support groups are very, very important. And similarly, there are lots of opportunities for students to get involved with student design groups or student groups of various types that will allow them to build their networks, to get to know upper year students who can help mentor them and things like that. So we know from experience that students with a sense of belonging and connection fare better because it helps you to get through some of the difficult times that will arise at some point in your career. And the last thing I'd like to say is that it's important also, and something that parents can help out with, is help your student to develop a realistic and robust financial plan. There's enough stress in just the academic side of things without having to worry about day-to-day finances. So things like how do I need a student loan and how do I go about applying for those? Making sure that everybody's aware of all the scholarship and bursary opportunities that are out there. And in the College of Engineering, we're very fortunate. We've got a lot of very generous alumni, and we give out literally many hundreds of thousands of dollars in scholarships and bursaries every year to help our students. So make sure students they check up to see which scholarships you're eligible for, and make sure you apply. And there are also things like, and you'll hear more about it, there's the paid co-op internship opportunities later on in the academic career. So that's something to start thinking about right away, because not only do you get to apply what you're learning in class, but you also get paid to do it. And that can help you to get through your program financially. And if you do need to or want to continue to work part-time to supplement your income, or just because that's important to you, then that's something that I would encourage you to do very intentionally, and talk to your academic advisors. And if it means perhaps, and a lot of students do this intentionally, extending your program in a very intentional way, then that maybe is something that you could do. But the main thing is that if you're going to do that, make sure you do talk to an advisor and make sure find out what is reasonable and doable, and do things with a plan. So those are all things that I think as parents you can talk to your students about. You can help them to develop some of these strategies for learning and developing some of these skills that they'll need to be successful. And if you, as a parent, if you have any questions, don't hesitate to contact us at the college at the Engineering Student Center. We'd be happy to let you know what the resources are. So just to sum up, and I hope that there will be lots of more information about how to be successful as we go through the evening, but just to know that we're here to support you, that there are a lot of supports available, and we will do our best to make sure that every student that comes through our door can be successful. So I'll turn it back now to Caitlin, who will take over for the rest of the evening. I will be here at the end. There'll be a question and answer period if anybody has any specific questions.
Thank you so much, Bruce. So welcome to all of the parents and the students who are able to join us tonight. If any point throughout the presentation you have any questions, please put them in the Q&A section, and I have a whole team of academic advisors and co-op coordinators, USask recruitment people. So please just put them in the chat and we'll answer them, or we can answer them at the end of the event if maybe there's a few questions that are coming up quite a bit. So I'm just going to share my screen so you can see my presentation. All right. So I believe I'm sharing my screen now. So first, before I begin, I want to acknowledge that the University of Saskatchewan is located on Treaty 6 territory and homeland of the Métis. We pay our respects to the First Nations and Métis ancestors at this place and reaffirm our relationship with one another. So this is kind of an agenda of what we're going to be talking about tonight. And I also just want to say that this session is being recorded so that we can share it if any of you aren't able to attend the whole event. So first, we're going to talk about the re-engineered first year and some key things that are maybe important for parents to know. Next, we're going to talk about some student supports and some different things that your students can take advantage of or get involved with. We have some upcoming events for 2021 that you and your students should attend. Next, we're going to talk about finances, so residence, meal plans, transit and parking. Then we're going to talk about some scholarships. And then I'm going to pass it off to my colleague, Kristen, who's going to talk about co-op and careers. So your students, if they are going to be entering fall of 2021, are a very lucky class because they're going to be the first cohort of students to do the re-engineered program. So we did a pilot project this past fall with one of our general engineering classes to try out the new grading system, and they loved it. It was so well received, and they liked it a lot better than the other grading systems and kind of the other way that a typical university course ran. So we're so excited to launch this. So this is just kind of a quote by one of the professors who helped design the program. And I think this really sums up what we've been trying to do. So we are really trying to make sure that if your student wants to be an engineer, that they have the supports, that they're going to be able to make it through their first year. So we're doing that by making it not easier, but more supportive and more thorough. So here is a kind of summary of the big things that I'm sure you've seen on our website, maybe some marketing. And I'm just going to talk a little bit more in detail with some of these. So one thing that's quite unique to this program is that there is the common breaks, which is a lot more like a high school day. So they're going to have a lunch break and an afternoon break. And then there's modular courses. So I think one thing with COVID is some of the high schools are kind of doing this different schedule where it's more of a condensed course in a shorter period of time. So we will be doing that system. We have a lot more hands-on learning because research has shown that students learn a lot better when they get to experience their courses rather than just learning a bunch of theories in a classroom. There's no finals, and I'll talk a little bit more about how the no finals system is working. And then also we're giving students to try again because in your first year of school for a lot of students, they have a lot to learn, maybe they stumble a bit, so we just want to be forgiving and give students the chance to improve their grades. So the new timetable. So this is the day that students are going to have, which looks very similar to a high school schedule. So everyone's going to be starting at 8:30. Everyone's going to have a common lunch break, more lectures and labs, and then a tutorial at the end of the day. Some things I want to point out for helping your student maybe plan where they're going to be living in Saskatoon is that everyone starts at 8:30. So if your student maybe isn't an early riser, maybe you want to try to find accommodations that are closer to campus just to try to make sure that they can make it for that 8:30 class. There's also a common lunch break, so it's great to make sure that your student is able to eat. And then there's those longer breaks that students can join clubs, go to the gym. There's so many different clubs and activities that they can join on campus. And then like Dr. Sparling said, the day ends in those daily tutorials, which we really, really recommend your student attend, just so that they can work on their homework with friends, ask a TA questions. And then there's also a half-speed option available. So maybe if your student wants to get a part-time job and you don't think that they want to do the full speed option and work their job, please talk to an academic advisor about doing the half-speed option. So again, with this balanced timetable, this is a photo of our library that they can do some studying in. They could maybe join, watch some Husky games. One of the clubs that's in the top corner there, that's the Husky Formula Racing team, and they build a race car. So there's lots of cool things that your student can get involved with. So this is a timetable that's going to be run from September up until the end of April. So a key thing I want to point out for you is that this will be a common schedule for all of our first years, so you don't need to be worrying about choosing your classes and which classes you're going to take and when, just because students are going to be having this common schedule. And you don't need to worry about registering right now. You will be receiving more information in the spring, so just keep checking your emails when we will tell you more information about how to register. So next to the grading system, which is another very different, a very different system than a lot of university. So it's been split up into 3 different types of skills. So we, like I said before, we piloted this grading system in last fall, and the students really, really liked it. They said that they found that they understood more what they were supposed to be delivering on, so that when they were studying, they knew exactly where they were supposed to be in the course, what they needed to do, and how to achieve those goals, which I think is really great for engineering. So the way it works is there's the type A knowledge. So those are just the very basic concepts, and students are going to be given unlimited opportunities to improve. And we are looking for them to complete all this. So these are going to be online quizzes and different things that they'll know pretty much immediately how they're doing in the course. The next is the type B. And with this, they're going to be given at least 2 tries. It can be up to 4 and 5, depending on what they're being graded on. And for this, we're looking for 70% competency. So your student is going to be given more tries to be successful, but we are expecting them to really understand this material. And then the type C is just normal grading, so students get what they get. The assessment is going to be done throughout the module, but if your student needs, maybe they didn't get the grade they wanted on one of their assessments, or they want to improve their grades, they can do that during the fall and winter top-ups that are going to be happening throughout the year. And this is just giving your student an opportunity to recover from their mistake. Maybe, their first try, they didn't quite study as much as they should have. Maybe they didn't quite understand it and they get a 50. And then they retry the exam and they get 100%. We're not going to be giving students a mixture of those grades. They're just going to be getting the final grade that they receive. So if they got a 50 and then on their second try they got 100, your student would just be receiving the 100% on that assessment. And then there's no final exams. So if you remember back in the schedule that I showed you, when the rest of campus is in final exams, we have used that time for more modules. So the final exam period will be in this winter time. They get to do a really cool hands-on experience with the different majors. And then in the April exam period, they're going to be doing a major project. So kind of like a small capstone project. So next I'm going to talk about some of the different student supports that we have available for your students. So the first kind of suite of supports that I'm going to talk about is our transition into first-year engineering. So a lot of these are implemented with our re-engineered program. So the first one is summer top-ups, and I'm going to talk about that in the next slide a little bit more. But these are just to help transition your student from high school into engineering and make sure that they're up to speed on everything. We have a whole team of first-year support staff, and some of them are here in the comments ready to answer your questions, and they're a fantastic group of people that just want to help students. And then in the first week of the terms, there is this kind of intro into engineering course. And with this, there's going to be a lot of skills that we're going to teach to students, like study skills, peer teaching, mental health, Indigenous people's history, research. And these are just to really help your student get all the skills they need to be successful in their degree. I remember when I started my undergraduate, we had kind of a similar lecture on a lot of these topics, and I kind of wrote it off and didn't think it was important. But as parents, I'd try to reinforce that study skills are really important to learn better study skills and to improve on that, and peer teaching is very effective. So if your student is maybe writing off those lectures, that to reinforce that it's very important. So the summer top-ups, these are free and optional modules that will be released in the summertime. So these are just to make sure that if you're maybe worried about your math or maybe your chemistry, you can take these modules. It's about an hour to 2 hours per module, depending on your skill and what you remember from these courses. And these are just to make sure that you know what you need to know before entering engineering, so that when you enter that first day class, you feel prepared that you know all the things that you need to know and that your student is ready. So again, I would highly recommend doing these just as a peace of mind, maybe to brush up in your skills. I think especially with the quint system, maybe if you took math, if your student took math in the very beginning of the fall, it's been a long time, so just to brush up on those skills. So we also have a first year teaching team, and this is to make sure that the first year program is running as one cohesive program rather than a bunch of separate courses. So the teaching team is going to make sure that the assignments are coordinated, so students don't have all of their assignments due on one day. They're coordinating the curriculum, so they're using this method called just-in-time learning to make the classes weave. And so what you're learning in one course, you're going to use those formulas in another course. There's also going to be a balanced exam schedule. I remember in my undergraduate degree, I had one day where I had 4 midterm exams in a row, and it was awful. So we're going to try to make sure that doesn't happen. And then it's also a small dedicated team of professors. So this is, again, so your student can get to know their professors, they can build relationships with them, and it's a lot more kind of like a high school or a smaller college because they really get to know those professors. And the photo is Dr. Sean Ma, who is one of the professors of the first year redesign and a first year professor, and this is a virtual reality lab where students get to build bridges using virtual reality. So pretty cool stuff that your student is going to get to learn in engineering. So I've heard a lot of questions about when do I need to pick my major? I don't know what major I'm going to choose. Don't worry about that. Students will be picking their majors in the winter time, so you don't need to pick it before you start. And what we're going to have is this discipline immersion in the fall. So your student can choose to have a discipline immersion in the majors that they're interested in. So maybe mechanical, and they're trying to decide between maybe computer, maybe civil seems interesting to them. What they'll get to do is they'll get to experience those different majors, talk to some people from those majors to help them make a more informed choice. I know so many students who went into engineering with their heart set that they were going to be a mechanical engineer, and then they learned a little bit more about one of the majors and changed their mind. So we just want to make sure that your student is making an informed decision. So if they don't know a major, that's completely fine. And then in the spring term, they're going to get to do a bridge course. So if they chose, let's say, geological engineering, they'll get to do a project in geological engineering to help transition them into their second year. And again, this is to help, maybe they absolutely hate chemical engineering, and that's what they chose. They can work with an academic advisor to maybe find a better suit for them. So some more student supports. We have a team of academic advisors, which there are academic advisors that are here to answer your questions. There's Sarah and Noreen. So please comment any questions and they'd be happy to answer them. And academic advisors do a whole suite of different things. They do everything from program planning, helping your student choose their major, different academic policies, scholarships and bursaries, and then they're also there to really just help your students. So maybe if they're struggling with mental health or they need some different help in different areas, encourage them to talk to an academic advisor, and the academic advisor can either point them in the right direction or to give them some really solid help. And then again, we have a first year support staff. We also have a lot of different initiatives for Indigenous students. So some different things that we offer is we have pathways to engineering. So maybe if your student's school didn't have chemistry, we can help bridge their academics into engineering to make sure they meet all the prereqs. We have a bridging program that's just to help students enter into engineering. We have a student success program. So that has a whole lot of different activities like Indigenous professional development, student support. It helps build community. We also have an Indigenous resource center, and they do a lot of really cool things like a lot of events and activities. and lots of different things for students to meet each other and build community. And then the Indigenous engineering student initiatives also have cultural teachings. So there's often elders that are brought to campus, there's soup and bannock, lots of different activities that you can get involved with, and these are for everyone. So if your student is just really wants to learn and meet different people, this is a great place to go to. So this is Alana, and she's also in the background ready to answer your questions. And there's going to be some more events coming up. There's going to be another parent night that's for Indigenous students. So please follow their Facebook page so you can learn about those events that are going to be coming up. Also, if you want to call, that's the phone number, or you can email Alana if you want to learn more about the different initiatives or just chat. She's very friendly. So please get in touch if you have any questions. So next I'm going to just kind of talk about the different events that are coming up. So on February 10th, we have this event called Engineering is More Than You Think. So I would recommend this if your student maybe doesn't know what they want to do, that they want to be an engineer, but they aren't really aware of a lot of the different careers. We're going to talk about how engineering connects to healthcare and agriculture, sustainable energy, environment, some really unexpected ways. They're going to get to meet some current students and hear about the research and capstone projects that they're doing, meet some researchers, some alumni, hear about careers. So this is a great event. Please register. It's going to be fantastic, and it'll be a YouTube live stream. We also are going to have a Welcome to Engineering event. So this is going to be from March 15th to 19th. And this is what we're going to be doing is we're going to be launching a Discord chat. So this is to help your students if maybe they want to just meet other students and ask questions about maybe like textbooks or just chat. Maybe if they're not from Saskatoon, to learn about the different great restaurants and things to do in the city. This would be a great time to learn about that. Also, we're going to have some social events like a trivia night. So keep your eyes open. We'll be releasing some details about this. And then UStart is going to be happening in May and June. And that is a lot of really important information in getting set up for university. So this is when we'll help you get registered for your classes, go through some academic information, and just get you all ready so you don't have to stress in August when you're getting ready to start school. So for the next little bit of this event, I'm going to talk about finances, which is a big part of university because we all know it's quite expensive and it's an investment in your future. So first I'm going to talk about residence and meal plans. So this is Voyager Place. It is a really cool building. It is connected to the whole campus tunnel system. So you can always tell the students who are living in Voyager Place because it'll be -40 outside and they'll be walking around in flip-flops and shorts because they don't have to go outside. They are a typical dormitory style, so there's single and double rooms, and these ones include an unlimited meal plan. So if your student maybe isn't interested in cooking, doesn't want to worry about buying groceries, this would be a great option. And also the food at Marquis is fantastic. We used to have staff events to kind of celebrate Christmas or summer, and we would all go to Marquis and it was delicious. So this is College Quarter. It's a beautiful building. It was built in 2012. It's just across College Drive from campus, so it's a short 5-10 minute walk. The buildings, my favorite thing about this type of dorm is that you have your own private bedroom, then you have a shared apartment, so you're sharing a bathroom with just one other person. Your apartment, you have a kitchen, so if you want to do a bit of cooking, you can. You have a living room. And this includes a not a full meal plan, but a partial meal plan, but you can top it up if you are interested. And then the third option you could look into residence is McEwen Park. This one is a little bit farther from from campus. It's just down the road a little bit more, and it's a little bit of an older building, but it's a really good price, so it's a good option too. So those are just kind of a summary of the different prices and the different meal plans that are included. So the college quarter, you get $320 per term of a cash card. McEwen Park, you're getting $80 of a cash card. And then Voyager Place is a full meal plan through Marquis Hall. So cash cards is basically just putting money towards your food. And the nice thing about this is that it's not just for the cafeteria. You can use this for Tim Hortons, for Subway, for Booster Juice, the Egg and Arts Cafe, which have like soup and sandwiches. So if you buy a little bit more money on your card, you get a good discount, or you can just do it in denominations of 50, and you can top it up throughout the year. So maybe if you're not sure how much food your student is gonna spend, you could start a little bit smaller and increase that as you go and figure out what an appropriate budget is. So for parking, it's a lottery system. So in the summer, you'll get an email about if you're interested in entering the lottery system. So it's $20 to apply, and it'll ask you for your top, I believe, 2 or 3 choices. I would recommend putting Y as your first choice and Q as your second choice. Y is really close to engineering, so it's a really short walk, which is handy for that 8:30 start time. And Q is just a little bit down the road from Y. It's also very close. And then the costs are on the side. Lot 15, if that's the lot that your student ended up with, it's a really long walk. So you may want to look into doing transit. It's still a good lot, but it is it's pretty far. And it's not electrified, which could potentially not be a great option in the wintertime. So for student fees, I just kind of want to run through what these are, because I didn't know when I started, and I wish someone would have told me what was included in the student fees. So you get an athletic fee. So that means that your students can attend Husky games at no charge, which is really fun. You can go to football games and volleyball games, basketball games. It's so much fun when we're able to do that again, of course. That the student fees also include a pass to the PAC. So there are so many great things you can do. So you can, they have a rock climbing wall, they have a pool, there's squash courts, there's a gym. They have different classes. There's like yoga and Zumba. So it's really great, and it's right on campus, so it's really convenient. There's also the student wellness services. So those offer things like counseling and mental health help. So there's a lot of great things that you can get involved with. And then the last 3 I have there are different fees that you can opt out of. So with your student fees, that includes health insurance. And if you can, if there's proof that your student is covered through your insurance, you can opt out of the health or dental if your student is covered through you. And then also there's a transit pass that is included in the student fees, and it's a great discount compared to buying a transit pass just from the city. But if you're doing parking instead and you won't be using the transit pass, you can opt out of that as well. So this is just kind of a rundown of the different budget that you should be preparing for. So tuition is going to be around $8,700. Your books really range depending on the courses, but try to budget for somewhere between $1,000 to $2,500. When I was talking to Sean back in the fall, he was saying that they're hoping to do a lot of open source books to try to cut down those fees for students. But then with the new redesign, they're going to need some licensing and some different software. So some of the cost that would be used for books, students are going to be using for software for the new program. But again, you'll be getting information about that in the spring and summer, so don't worry about that right now. And then the student fees are just under $900. So generally look at a total of about $12,000, and then residence and parking really vary depending on if you choose to use residence or parking. So those are the different costs. So next I'm going to talk about scholarships and bursaries. After looking at the cost of everything, I'm sure that you are very excited to find out about ways that you can get a little bit of money towards your student's degree. It looks like my presentation isn't working, so I'm just going to stop sharing my screen and reshare it. Hopefully it will load. There we go. I think that is working better now. So like Bruce was saying before, our students are very lucky that they're supported by a fantastic network of alumni and industry and supporters that last year we gave out nearly $2 million for engineering students. And 1 in 4 students receive award support, which is a lot of students. So this is the guaranteed entrance scholarship. So these you don't need to worry about applying for. These will be granted to you automatically when you apply for admissions. So these are kind of the averages to try to aim for. So maybe if your student is sitting at an 84.9, to really try to bump that up to an 85 to get $500. And this is based on your 5-subject average. So please go to our admissions page to figure out how we calculate your students' 5-subject average. But basically it's going to be a math, your best math, their best English, and then 3 other electives. And there's some requirements on those electives, but they can be a science, they can be a humanity, or an art class. But go look at the admissions page to find out more information about how that's calculated. And we also have the competitive entrance awards, and the deadline for these is coming up pretty soon. So make sure that you apply for admissions by February 15th and submit all of the documents for the awards and apply for the awards by March 1st. So these range from things like financial need, leadership and volunteer work, academic achievement, geographics. There's some really random geographics that they're looking for. I know there's some that are looking for a student from a very specific location. So make sure to scroll through and look at all the awards and see what your student is eligible for. And then there's also awards for visible minorities, and engineering. There's lots of awards for women and Indigenous students. So make sure to go check them all out. I've highlighted a couple of great awards here. There's so many more. So there's a Schuler Leadership Award that's $100,000. And that one is looking for leadership, and that you need to be a Canadian citizen. And yeah, there's a lot of different things that apply to a lot of different students, like women. There's one that's looking for a student who just lives outside of Saskatoon or Regina, Indigenous students, and then there's some that are just looking for just a student entering the College of Engineering. So check these out online and make sure to apply for anything that you're eligible for, because some scholarships don't even get taken. So make sure to apply. So next, I'm going to pass it off to my colleague, Kristen, who is going to talk about co-op and careers. So I will stop sharing my screen so that she can share her presentation.
Thanks so much, Caitlin. Okay. Just give me 1 second. So before I start sharing, I'll maybe just tell you a little bit about myself. So as Caitlin mentioned, my name is Kristen Cutting. I am the Co-op and Career Coordinator for the College of Engineering. I've actually been on campus since 2011 and have worked in the field of sort of career education and employment since that time, working at the Student Employment and Career Center on campus, and then transitioning over to the College of Engineering a couple of years ago. I actually was responsible for our previous professional internship program, and have recently made the shift over to our new co-op internship program. So that's largely what I'm going to talk to you about today. And let's just get this screen up and running. Caitlin, I seem to be having some trouble with mine. Are you able to share it from your end?
Yep, I will share your presentation. Just give me 1 second.
Thank you. Thanks, Caitlin. Okay, so I'm going to start by talking a little bit about what co-op is. I think for some people, it's not necessarily clear. So cooperative education falls under the umbrella of what we would call work integrated learning. And what that does is it really formally integrates a student's academic degree with work placements in industry. And we try to view these types of programs as partnerships. So a partnership between the institution, the student, and the employer. One of the things that I think is important to understand about co-op and sort of work integrated learning overall is that it's not just a work placement program. It's really looking at the development of transferable skills, largely employability skills, and really trying to enhance a student's degree through a work placement experience. You can go to the next slide, Caitlin. So there's lots of different benefits that come alongside participating in cooperative education. So one of the biggest things that I think a lot of students really benefit from is the opportunity to have a hands-on work experience specific to the field of engineering. So a lot of students, I think, are kind of concerned about graduating and not having had any work experience, and will an employer hire me? Sometimes we hear things like you have to have X number of years of experience, those types of things. And so through these types of programs, it really gives that student a head start in terms of really getting their career started. So expanding their network, kind of learning about what opportunities are out there, obviously building their resume. And as Dr. Sparling had mentioned earlier on, they do earn a very competitive salary when they participate in the co-op internship program that we have. For a lot of students, they do become a lot more employable. And so, as I mentioned before, there's the development of those transferable skills. Some of you may think of them as soft skills, and I like to think of them as both transferable and employability skills, as well as a lot of the professionalism skills that they'll begin to learn in the classroom, but that they really have a chance to sort of put into practice when they go into a workplace. I think it also gives them the opportunity to understand what industry looks like and what its needs are and how they fit into that. And probably the most important thing, for myself, certainly as a co-op coordinator, is to know that we're providing students with a supported learning environment. And so the students that go through our particular program have support from several different levels. We actually assign them to an industry mentor, and that person has their professional engineering designation. And the role of that person is really to help that student transition from school into the workplace. And so the focus is not on grading them in any way, but it's really to be as supportive as possible, to answer questions, to learn about the career that person has. They also have a workplace supervisor that gets assigned to them, and that person may or may not be an engineer. More often than not, they will be, but there are some cases where they may not, and so that person would be working with the student on a daily basis, pretty much, as they sort of navigate their work placement. And then they have access to our program staff. So that's myself, and I've got a colleague, Tracy MacArthur, who works alongside me. So like I said, very much a supported environment. We really want to help students to make that transition from education into the workplace and to make it as smooth as possible. Next slide, please. So some of the program features, and I want to make sure that I do a good job, and I'm hoping that I'm doing a good job of clearly sort of articulating what our program looks like, and I'll talk a little bit about how it differs from other schools in a moment. But for us, it's an optional degree add-on. So it's an extra piece to a degree. Students that do complete 12 months or more of work experience through the program will graduate with co-op internship on their parchment. And they may be able to count their pre-grad work experience towards their professional designation requirements. So a lot of students really want to start to get that start in terms of gaining the experience that they would need to apply for their professional engineering designation through APEGs or any of the governing bodies in each province. And those bodies will look at some of the work experience that students gain through co-ops and internships and potentially count that towards that designation. And so that's where we as program staff really work with employers to ensure that they're meeting specific criteria through the work placement so that students could potentially apply that. In terms of the term lengths that are available, this is one of the nicest features, I think, of our new program versus our previous internship program, is that we have 4, 8, 12, and 16-month term lengths. And we have 3 different start dates available for students, so those being January, May, and September. One of the pieces that I think is helpful for a lot of students is that we've made it a little bit more flexible so that students can actually take on more than one work placement with us. So there is that opportunity to combine placements up to a total of 20 months. And later on, I'm going to talk a little bit about some timelines. You'll be able to see some of the options that exist. The placements that we have are across Canada and are full-time hours and paid. I have often had questions about, can I work internationally? The answer is possibly. Right now, of course, with our current pandemic, we do have some restrictions around that, but it's certainly something that we can look into in the future if that is something that a student wants to pursue. And that would be important to have kind of a full conversation with program staff to really understand what a student is hoping to get out of that, and having a good understanding about whether they want to apply the work experience towards their professional designation as well. Next slide, please. So what makes our program different from others? And I'm sure many of you have probably heard of co-op programs and that kind of thing. So the first thing that I would make mention of is that we really try to focus on the longer term work placements. In the field of engineering, what often happens is that it takes a significant amount of time to really kind of get up to speed in terms of project or even just getting into an industry. And so what we find is that the 4-month work placements can be very valuable, particularly earlier on in the degree, but oftentimes in order for a student to really delve into a more robust project or to have the opportunity to work on multiple projects, the longer term placements are particularly advantageous to them. So what we often see is that the majority of our students end up taking on 16-month work terms, but we certainly have seen students take on the others as well. The other feature that I think is helpful, certainly in a time where there's a lot of uncertainty, is that because it's an optional program, it doesn't impede a student's ability to graduate. So it's not that co-op is a separate degree stream where you're required to complete an X number of months of work experience in order to graduate. If a student comes into the program and they have full intentions of doing 16 months, but they only end up doing a 4-month placement or perhaps none at all, they're still able to graduate. And so I think that, again, that flexibility can be particularly helpful for a student. One of the features that I think is particularly helpful too in terms of really providing that support is that we do have a preparation course that's required for students to complete before they even begin the job search process. And so through that course, they develop some key employability skills that really act as a complement to some of the technical skills that they're learning in the classroom. And with the opportunity to have multiple placements, it also allows for an opportunity to experience different industries. So we know that you know, there are very different work experiences that exist in different industries and different locations. And so being able to do more than one work placement can really help a student to understand what might work for them in terms of a work environment. Perhaps they're going to learn about something that they thought was one thing and realize that, wow, you know, it's not at all, or this isn't an industry for me. So it's certainly a really nice opportunity to do some learning ahead of graduation. And next slide, please. So in terms of eligibility, there are a number of different criteria to be able to participate in this program. The first thing I would start off by saying is that we don't have a set number of seats for this program. So we do try to be as inclusive as possible. One of the main criteria is that they do need to be enrolled in an undergraduate program in our college when they do apply. And so unfortunately, this program is not available to graduate students, but only to our undergraduate student body. They need to have completed at least 2 years of their degree program at the time of their first work placement. And so the earliest a student would be going out would be the spring and summer months following completion of their second year. Have attained and maintain a sessional weighted average of 65% or more when applying to the program and then throughout participation in the program. And then finally, they need to return to at least 12 credit units of coursework that's specific to their degree in engineering following a final work placement. So we really have tried to make our eligibility criteria as flexible as possible. We want to be able to include students in multiple years of their degree. Next slide. So in terms of recommended timelines, and this is merely a recommendation, kind of a best case scenario, if you will, but there's lots of flexibility here. So my suggestion would be that if this is something that you know that you're a young adult, or if you are a student on the call that you're interested in your first year, in the second term of your program, so in the winter term, we would recommend that you attend a promotional information session about the program. So you'll learn a little bit more about kind of the fine details of it, but also be able to hear from some students who are currently out on a work placement or who have returned from a work placement, so you can really understand what their experience was like. Following attending one of those sessions, you would submit your application to the program, and that typically happens throughout the month of March. And this is going to be for sort of the following year. So we plan quite far in advance when you're in this program. When you enter into year 2, when you're in your first term, so in the fall term, you'll complete that preparation course that I mentioned. This particular course ran for the first time this past fall, and it was obviously in an online format. It was extremely well received by students. They found that the online format was actually quite useful for them. With this, the course material lent itself really well to that. And so it's likely that this course will continue as an online course in the future. Then in January, so in term 2 of their second year, you'll start to apply to jobs. We have an exclusive job board just for this particular program. And we encourage students to look there as a starting point, but we also strongly encourage students to also look outside of that board, really kind of expanding their net as far as possible to try to find some work that might really interest them and serve as a good starting point for them. In the spring and summer following year 2, they would begin their first work placement, and at that point they're only eligible for a 4-month placement. So spring and summer work for that period of time, and then return to studies in term 1 of year 3, and either being able to go out in term 2 of year 3 or potentially in the spring and summer following year 3 for a longer term placement or a shorter term placement, depending on what works for them. So by going through this particular timeline, if they did a 4-month early on and then a 16-month later, they would get that full 20 months of experience. And the next slide. So I know people often find it helpful to see some statistics around the program. So these particular stats are coming from our previous professional internship program that is just sort of in the process of wrapping up. And we just had our first cohort of co-op students go out last week. So in 2020, we had 133 students that got placed. We were very fortunate as a program to have not been sort of really largely impacted by the pandemic. We saw very few students lose work placements altogether. We saw a few early terminations and some late starts, but overall we did very well, which was really nice to see. The average salary that a student would earn is around $25 an hour. We see a lot of variation in this depending on the industry that a student is working in, as well as their location. So province by province, there can be quite a discrepancy and sometimes not as much. As you can see, about 77% of the placements are in Saskatchewan, so we do have a really strong local employer and industry base that supports our program. 73% of our students began work in May, and that often is a really popular start date just because it aligns quite nicely with an academic schedule. It also lends itself really well to a 16-month work placement. And so again, a lot of students are kind of seeking out that longer term opportunity. And we had 46 employers that hired our students. Next slide. So again, just to provide a little bit of context, because it can be quite helpful, I think, to understand where students are working. So I've broken it down by the 8 different programs that we offer. We do have students that go out from all 8 programs. Some of those programs are much larger than others, and so we have a lot more employers that might be hiring. And this is just a cross section. It's by no means an exhaustive list. But as you can see, you know, we have employers that are within industries like oil and gas, all levels of government that will hire, smaller consulting companies that will hire students. And so a lot of variety there. And I think depending on a student's interest area and how sort of keen they are to sort of take ownership and do some job searching, it can be some really very unique opportunities that certainly present themselves for people. And the next slide. So thinking a little bit more broadly about engineering careers, one of the messages that I think is really important is that engineering degrees overall offer a lot of flexibility, not only in terms of working within different industries, as you saw on the previous slide, but also we're seeing a larger shift, I think, towards multidisciplinary teams. And so really being able to work with people from different educational backgrounds, people that have different areas of expertise. I know that you know, within engineering, it's not just sort of a direct path, you just become an engineer. For some people, yes, but for others, they may want to shift into doing research work, or perhaps they want to get into management work. So there's a lot of flexibility that way, and of course, it's the kind of degree that you can work locally, you can certainly take it internationally and travel with it. So lots of opportunities there. And I've listed sort of some of the major areas and industries that we tend to see our students sort of working within, and this would sort of blend over into our graduates as well, and where they're finding work following their degree. And the next slide. So I wanted to provide you with some contact information, both for myself and then my colleague Tracy. Jointly, we run this program together. You can certainly contact us by email there at the bottom of the page, and there is a link to our website, specifically to our prospective students tab, that will give you sort of some clear information, again, about the program and the eligibility. There were a few kind of key takeaways that I did want to mention, and this will echo some of Dr. Sparling's earlier comments, but kind of thinking about how you could support your student or your young adult if they are interested in this particular program. The first thing I would say is to really encourage them to take ownership of their job search. As program staff, we provide as much support as we can as they're coming into it and going through that prep course, but we really want students to take ownership and to do some reflection on what's important to them when it comes to their career path and what some of their goals might be. And so really encouraging them to own this process and to sort of think broadly is a really great first step. The second piece to all of this would be to encourage them to be really strategic when it comes to their employment, and particularly when we think about their summer employment. Sometimes I see students that go back to the same job year after year, and not that there's anything wrong with that, but we really try to recommend that students gather different experiences so that they're able to develop a really broad set of different types of skills, because that we know that that will help to make them more employable down the road, either through a co-op opportunity or otherwise. And so really trying to encourage that strategic mindset early on, I think, can be very helpful. And the last takeaway that I would just share with you, that this one's maybe a little bit tougher sometimes for parents to hear, but to support your student to consider relocation as an option for a work placement. So as program staff, we ask students this question when they apply: are you willing to relocate? Do you have any limitations to relocate for a work placement? Because we want to have an understanding of how flexible they might be. Sometimes what happens is we have students that say, I will only work in one particular city, and that can really limit the number of opportunities that are available to them, especially because we do compete against students from other schools for very similar work opportunities. Not always, but in certain cases. And so having a more sort of broad mindset when it comes to that, and the ability to relocate can certainly be advantageous. So with that, I think I'll end my portion of the presentation, but I'm happy to answer questions as we get into the Q&A section. And thank you, Caitlin, for helping with this screen sharing.
Thank you so much, Kristen. That was really great. So yeah, the co-op program is fantastic, and I would really highly recommend any students who are interested to apply. It really, really helps students to get jobs afterwards. So really great program. So next we're going to be jumping into our Q&A as the last part of this event. So I'm just going to take a look at the questions that have been asked in the Q&A, and I'll maybe ask some of the panelists. And again, like if you have more questions, please keep putting them in the chat so that we can answer them. So let me take a look. So I have a question that I think maybe this would be good for Bruce to answer. So the question is, you indicated this re-engineered first year has no finals. How do the next years look? Is it more traditional classes, labs with regular grading and finals?
Hi, that's a good question. At the present, our upper years are more like the traditional university classes where they do have final exams and a more regular schedule. But we're expecting that as we find out what works really well in our new first year, that those things will, our overall programs will evolve to be more like that. But for the time being, there will be final exams. But I think what the advantage of the new first year program is that by the time they get to their upper years, they'll have the study skills, they'll have the confidence, they'll have the background to succeed more easily. And it's really that transition into first year that tends to cause students the biggest struggle. So I think by giving them this first year buffer with our new program, that will even help them for success in their upper years as well.
So the next question, I think this is a really great question, and I'm not sure who wants to answer this one, so maybe just pop on your video if you want to answer it. The question is, my son is considering a few different universities. Why should he take engineering at the U of S, and what is it best known for?
I guess I could take a crack at that. I know that Carlene also has a lot of good anecdotal evidence from our alumni that she deals with. But from my perspective, I think the College of Engineering at the University of Saskatchewan is really an ideal size. We have excellent research going on in the college, cutting edge research. We're a research intensive university, so we have excellent labs that the students have access to and do get to try out when going through their programs. So we have that aspect to it, but we're also a small enough university that that we get a real sense of community being developed. Our students get to know each other, they get to know the professors, and we remain in contact with our students once they become alumni. So we have a very close-knit alumni community, which I think speaks to how well connected they feel to our college. So I think that size that promotes the community and the spirit in our college is probably our greatest strength, in addition to the first year program, which I think is going to be the best in North America.
Great, thank you, Bruce.
Caitlin, I also just add on to Bruce.
Yeah.
So just to introduce myself, because I wasn't one of the speakers, I am Carlene Deutscher, and I'm the Alumni Relations Coordinator here for the College of Engineering. And through my job, I actually get to work with a lot of alumni. And like Bruce mentioned, I think one of the big features, I don't want to say it's a selling feature, but a really good connection point for students as they move from students to alumni is being a part of our thorough family. And I think that they can find themselves, if they go to Calgary, we have actually a very strong alumni network there. We have alumni that are regularly connected in Edmonton, Vancouver, Toronto, Hong Kong. So it's really a whole global endeavor, I guess, that our engineers are really known for sticking together. And I think our alumni have gone on to do quite remarkable things, whether that's something, I don't want to say it's a small role because it's still pretty neat, but one of our recent grads is now working in Portland for Adidas, designing shoes and different athletic wears for them. Our alumni have also gone on and are president and CEO for companies like USask Power and USask Energy. We've had alumni that have actually helped to start and launch SpaceX, and even actually had to do their own personal transactions with a credit card. And then alumni that are making transformational differences in healthcare and breast cancer detection. So it's really, we've got alumni that are doing everything in a whole variety of fields. And I think that's one really big advantage, is that, like Bruce said, we do have that hands-on knowledge and just a really, really strong program and curriculum. So Caitlin, I'll pass it back to you.
Thanks, Carlene. The next question that I'm going to get Bruce to answer, this is a question that's been coming up a lot, and it just has to do with COVID and if things are going to be virtual or online. And the question is, how likely are courses going to be online due to the pandemic? How does this affect courses? Are labs possible online? So if you would maybe you could talk a bit about how that is looking.
Okay, so we're really hoping, and we're quite confident that we're going to have at least some form of in-person activity starting in first year next year in the fall. Of course, that depends on provincial health guidelines and the path that COVID takes, and all kinds of factors like that. But we do expect to have we may have to have a modified program where we have the labs in person and the large lectures still remote. But we will have we're hoping to have some in-person components for sure. And even if we don't, we've learned over the past year that we can provide a quality program and the learning experience that we need to provide remotely. And so regardless of whether or not we are allowed to come together in person, we will provide all of the experiences, including the lab experiences that you need to become an engineer. So, but the short line is we're really hoping to be together and being able to have in-person labs and other experiences.
So the next question, I'm not sure, maybe this is for one of the academic advisors, and the questions are just about computers. So one person is asking what the recommended computer would be, and there's another question if Macs are compatible with the software, which I think this is a great question, as I'm sure that a lot of students are looking at laptops and trying to figure out what technology they should be looking into to purchase.
Hi, Caitlin. I guess I could take a swing at this. So Sarah, you were going to do that? No, that's
No,
okay.
I was going to say you can jump in first and then I can chime in. I'm okay with that
Okay.
too. And, yeah, and maybe
That,
Noreen might also have some feedback too.
we will be providing students with some recommendations in terms of computers. That will be part of the package that we send out, the information that we send out later on. And Macs, certainly we do have lots of students that do have Mac-based computers. There are some issues with compatibility and some of the software that are used. But there are also workarounds. So it might be a little more challenging if you've got a Mac, but certainly we do have lots of students that do choose to go that route. So I'll pass it to Sarah then.
Sure. Just to add to what Dr. Sparling has said, typically usually in spring, likely early May, approximately mid-May, we send out what we would call an engineering registration guide. And within that, we would provide tips and information, particularly around some of these very commonly asked questions. So we just encourage you to keep an eye out for those guides. I know this past year we had some information there about what kind of computer things to be mindful of, and of course, because these things change. And then with the new first year program coming out, there will be some specific software that will be as a part of your learning. So we will try to update you as much as possible as we know more information. So hopefully that just ties you over in the meantime. Caitlin, I'll give it back to you.
Thank you, Sarah and Dr. Sparling. So I'm just looking at some more of the questions to try to find some questions that have been coming up quite a bit. This one, I guess, is maybe an easy one. What are the grades required for admissions? And then another part of that question that maybe I'll pass to either Danny or Erico is about residence, and if we know anything about residence and what that's going to look like.
Hi, Caitlin. I was just typing the response to the residence question. So the question regarding the residence, unfortunately, we don't have a fixed date when residence office is gonna actually announce whether students are able to live in residence, because it's really hard to predict like a future situation under COVID-19. But once student apply for any of our USask residence office will contact you through email and let you know what's the situation gonna be and so on. So please keep in mind to check your email constantly. And also, if you haven't registered or apply for any residence, please keep in mind Voyager Place that was on Caitlin's presentation. That one is, especially that one, is guaranteed for first year student if you apply by the end of January. So if you're interested in, please do so. Thank you.
Thanks, Eriko. So I'm looking at some more of the questions. I can answer this question. Once a student has accepted for early admissions, is there an initial tuition deposit required? No, there is not. So if you have received an offer, or your student has received an offer, you just need to hit accept, and that's all that we are looking for. What's another question? So we have about 10 minutes left. Here's a good question. Our son would like to participate in youth sports. How manageable would that be, especially if he wants to be involved in tutorials and successful in his academics? I think maybe that'd be a good question for Sarah or Noreen that can talk maybe a bit about the different workload of an engineering degree and how students can maybe manage sports, and maybe also if you could talk a little bit about the half speed option.
Okay, maybe I could give some input on that. So it depends. We have quite a few students that's involved with Husky athletics or any athletics outside of campus. And it all depends. Most of them take a reduced course load to make sure that they could balance their time commitments for the sport and also still be able to successfully complete whatever courses they register for. So in the coming year, for the new first year, as mentioned by Caitlin before, we have that half-speed program. So if your son or daughter is actively involved in other activities or sports outside of their academic program, then maybe a half-speed program would work best for them. But in reality, there are also some students that can handle a heavy course load class, maybe other extracurricular activities. So it all depends. And depending on the student, I would highly encourage them to talk to us before deciding what they want to do. I think that's what I have, Caitlin. Thanks.
Great. So the next question, I'm going to ask Eriko or Danny. And the question is, how do you apply for bursaries and scholarships?
For sure. So if you are interested in any of USask scholarships or bursaries, your application to any of those scholarships is going to be through your PAWS. So PAWS is your personal portal, university portal. And after you submit your application, so without knowing whether you're admitted or not, you should have received an email with your NSID and a temporary password to log in your PAWS account. And from the PAWS, you can apply for scholarship and bursaries. Thank you.
Thanks, Eriko. Let's see. Oh, here's another good question, maybe for Eriko again, sorry. The question is, when looking at entrance scholarships, are you required to have a grade 12 social studies or humanities, or can you look at grade 11 marks? So I think maybe what the student or parent means is, are we looking at your grade 12 marks or your grade 11 marks for scholarships?
Yeah, for sure. So the guaranteed entrance scholarships, our admission office gonna calculate your admission average twice. First time is when you applied. So let's say you already applied and our admission office use your grade 11 marks to calculate your admission average. And the second time, our admission office gonna calculate your average gonna be with your final grade 12 marks. Whichever highest average, you're gonna receive the amount of guaranteed entrance scholarships.
So I think that is so great because, you know, maybe COVID maybe served you really well if your classes were canceled, or maybe the major marks dropped a little bit. You don't have to worry because if you maybe reach that 90 average that you're looking for, you're going to be guaranteed to get that scholarship for the guaranteed. And you can just try to boost that in the rest of the year. So I'm just going to look at the rest of the questions. We're just going to have time for a couple more questions just because we're going to be ending at 8:30. Oh, here's a good question. How do we register for the February 10th event? I am going to get one of my colleagues to put the link in the chat so that everyone can receive that. Let's see, where's another good question? When are the guaranteed scholarships paid to the students? That will be applied directly to your tuition. So if your tuition, let's say, is $8,000 and you get a $1,000 scholarship, you'll just be paying minus of whatever scholarships that you receive. Okay, here's maybe another good question. Maybe for Erico or for Danny. And the question is, if you are conditionally accepted to the U of S and your marks you're going to need drop, like Math 30, what happens?
Okay, so I hope I understand the question, but as long as you maintain 75%, which is the admission average requirement for engineering, and then you should be fine. If, let's say, your admission average, so 5 subject average, dramatically drop down to, like, let's say 65, then our admission office probably going to contact you and ask what happened and so on. But let's say if your math mark wasn't great, but the other 4 subjects actually maintain 75% or higher, and your total average is around 75%, you should be fine. I hope I answered your question.
Erico, just to clarify,
Mm-hmm.
the Math 30-1, is that the equivalent of Pre-Calc 30?
Correct. So
so the minimum grade for Math 30-1, if that's the Pre-Calc 30, should be 70%. 70%. Lower than that, that will make the student ineligible for engineering.
Oh yes, that's correct. So I assume the student is from Alberta is Math 30-1 is pre-calculus. And yes, what Noreen said is correct. So you have to have at least 70% for Math 30-1. Sorry about that.
All right, so because it's getting really close to 8:30, that kind of wraps up our event. So I'm just sending a link to everyone. If you could please fill out this survey. We're thinking of maybe doing another parent session in the spring. So if you could just give us some feedback, what you thought of the event, maybe something that we could touch on that you didn't hear, just so we can try to make this event better. We would really, really appreciate it if you could fill out this survey and help us out. So thank you so much to all of my panelists and the whole College of Engineering and student recruitment that helped put this event together. And thank you so much to all the parents and students who attended. We're so excited to welcome you into the college. and we, fingers crossed, hopefully can see you in person next fall. And if not, we will be happy to see you over some more Zoom calls. So again, thank you so much. And I hope you all have a great evening and a fantastic 2021.